Just to give you a quick intro into where I started my flying career, I left high school in New Plymouth at the tender age of 16 and went off to the RNZAF as a airman cadet back in those days at Boy Entrance School. And in fact, only just a matter of February, we had a 50th anniversary at Taupo for the guys that started, and of the 145 that we had enrolled that year, we had 60 something at the reunion, which was quite good considering that there'd been quite a significant number. I think 25 are no longer with us. So it was a good turnout and a lot of fun, and from the entrance into the RNZF, I spent my first couple of years as an airframe mechanic on 3 battlefield support squadron back in those days, 3 BSS. A few cheers, which was the helicopter squadron, of course, and back then, I'm talking about 1967, everything was almost brand new. Yeah. So we had a few Hueys there and Bell 47Gs, of course, and a lonely couple of Harvards and I think 3 or 4 Osters for the Army here in the hangar. And from there, a couple of years penance there with probably the greatest Air Force wing commander, I'm talking about the rotary wing commander that you could ever hope to have. He's no longer with us either, Dougal Dallison. Absolutely amazing boss, and I can tell you there were some weird and wonderful activities went on around that airfield at times over his career, and especially, you know, he would think nothing of coming in on a weekend, put a wet liner in a Huey and throw a motor mower in the door and an electrician in the fridge and go down to his patch at Taupo and mow the lawns and put the new fridge in and then go looking for a deer on the way home in the forest at Wairau. Good boss. A couple of years there, and then I went back and did my fitters course at once again at Woodburn, and from there moved on to AMS at Whenuapai, Aircraft Maintenance Squadron, which Dave referred to earlier on. And I did my penance there in the skin bay bashing rivets for about 18 months, and then in early 72 I applied to do a wings course with the Air Force. Over a period of months I went down and did a flight grading and an air tourer, and then was accepted for pilot training, and I started my wings course in 772 we were, so July 72 I started at Wigram. And suffice to, I don't want to bore you with the details, but we did about 170 hours on the Harvard and about 80 hours on the Devon as a twin engine trainer back then. And then at the end of our Devon period we got about 3 or 4 hours back in the Harvard just to go rip, shit and bust and let the steam off before we graduated. And I can assure you that was a hell of a lot of fun. It was great to get back in the old big tail dragger again. And from there I went off to dear old 42 Squadron, operating C-47s, as Dave correctly points out. In fact, there weren't, believe it or not, many DC-3s made. They were just about all C-47s. And a short break between wings course and getting started on conversion course at 42 Squadron, and just looking back, I was quite staggered to see that after 3.5 hours dual with a whole 257 hours in my logbook when I completed my wings course, 3.5 hours dual went solo on the DC-3. Not solo as such, but in the left-hand seat. And so it was for there, 2.5 years on DC-3s at 42 Squadron, and I can tell you it was probably, back then, to go from a small tail dragger to a big tail dragger was probably the best transition you could ever hope to make. And I think one of the things that has really stuck with me throughout my aviation career, and again, without wanting to bore you, but I've recently retired from Air New Zealand after 37 years with them, and nigh on 27,000 hours in my logbook. The thing I learnt about more than anything with the Harvard and the DC-3 was you have to use your feet. Simple as that. And I'm not talking about brakes and nose wheel steering or anything like that, or tail wheel steering. I'm talking about big course movements to keep the aeroplane pointing in the direction you want it to go. So it was a good couple of years, 2.5 years on 42 Squadron, and we did a myriad of different activities, believe it or not, with the old C-47 back then. You know, for the list goes on. We had 2 VIP aeroplanes, of course, 1 VVIP aeroplane for the Queen, and then we had a couple of Paradaks that were gutted with just steel pannier seats that spent most of their time at Whenuapai doing parachuting with the Army. And we had 2 nav aeroplanes, basically, one that was fitted out for nav, particularly with an Astrodome, and the other one, good old 46, which is what our aeroplane represents, was the shuttle, of course, which went up and down the country, generally every Monday and Friday, picking up defence people and shifting them the length and breadth of the North and South Island, and did the same again on Monday morning. So people got the weekends at home. We also did quite a lot of Navy co-ops, where we had the shuttle aeroplane 46 had a dome on the rear door as well, and it was fitted out with a drogue towing system. So we would go out and rendezvous with the Navy, particularly back then it was, we were talking about only with little boats like the Lachlan and occasionally a frigate. Put a long wire cable out the back end of the aeroplane, 6,000 foot tow conventionally, and a big radar reflector windsock tow on the end of the tow. Fly around and let the Navy fire ACAC at us, which may not surprise you, but back then, of course, health and safety didn't exist, and we didn't even wear a parachute. So that was some of the better activities that I thoroughly enjoyed about flying the aeroplane. We did quite a lot of search and rescue as well, and I've spent many hours in the aeroplane up and down patches of the ocean all around the North and South Island, looking for yachts that have been dismasted and sailors in distress and all that sort of thing, and searching for lost aeroplanes that have gone down in the bush. And it may not surprise you, of course, that the Gurney bird that we were operating back then had very little in the way of nav aids. So it had the good old 16440, was it?
Yeah.
The VHF, which was a crystal tune thing, so whenever you went outside the conventional range of frequencies, particularly in New Zealand going to Australia, you'd sit there frantically with the radio, the signaller in the station, pulling out crystals as fast as you could, plugging another one in before you could talk to the next air traffic controller. And then, of course, it had to tune the crystal before you could actually talk to them anyway. So we operated with a 200 meg DME, good old Rebecca, and a couple of ADFs, and that was our lot. So, we were out going up and down the coast off the North and South Island, and in fact I can remember on one of the searches I did was for a yacht that was one of the sailors, there were 2 guys on board, one of them being quite seriously injured, was supposedly off the Clarence River mouth. And we launched out of Ahakia with on a search, and there was an Iroquois that was dispatched to sit on the ground at the Clarence River mouth waiting until we'd located this yacht, and then he would go out and winch this injured sailor off. We spent quite a period of time searching in the area, and eventually he was liaising with Wellington Radio on HF, and that was being relayed to us on VHF. So eventually this one sailor that was still active on the boat said, "I can see your landing lines." So we got radar vectored essentially by him saying, "No, I've lost you." So he turned back and he said, "Now I've got you." He sort of steered us to where he was, and he was about 65 miles away from where he thought he was. So it was no wonder we were struggling to find him. So we bombed a marker buoy into the tide so that we didn't lose contact with him, and the Iroquois launched off the coast. Now the big issue was that the boat was actually greater than 50 miles out to sea, and the Iroquois was not permitted to go outside that range, so we had to get them to motor inside the 50 miles, and we kept putting another sea dive marker alongside them. And eventually the Iroquois came out and arrived overhead. Well, they put the crewmen on the cable and started to winch them down on the shot, and the cable broke. Bugger, we might say, yes, absolutely. So the cable broke and the helicopter crewman crashed down on the deck of this yacht. Fortunately, wasn't seriously hurt himself, but then he and the guy that were left on board that were active actually motored the yacht back to up to not to Picton, to Wairau, to Blenheim. and so was this lost effort, you know, but that was the sort of thing we used to partake in. We did quite a bit of supply dropping as well. And Dave, well, we haven't got any NUCs here, have we? Fighter pilots for the Air Force? No. A few years back they had Stu McIntyre, who was the base commander at Ohaki, decided that there should be a trophy set up for all the aviators on the base there to compete for a navigation, timing and bombing / supply dropping exercise. So it was specifically designed, of course, for the knuckleheads in the A4s to go out and win this thing without any doubt, no doubt at all. Turned out that good old 42 Squadron came along and kicked their ass big time. And all we did was fly around in a Gooney bird with lines on a map, of course, timed, and threw a pack out the door. And so forever and a day, the Stuart McIntyre Trophy's got 42 Squadron on it from day one.
And you'll be pleased to know when I was there in 80 and 82, we won it again.
Wonderful.
42.
Good, yeah. So from 42, I migrated on to C-130s, but Dave's now flying. But there's a subtle, about 40 years difference here. And interestingly enough, the C-130 back then, of course, was the Mark I version. And I'd done quite a bit of panel beating on them when I was in the skin bay at Whenuapai before I went flying them. And, you know, they were less than 10 years old. And I'd have to say, probably one of the most satisfying aeroplanes I've ever had my hands on. Especially back then. Particularly stable platform and very, very easily flown very accurately, because it was so responsive. It had a huge amount of power, and you could fly it very readily at plus or minus a knot without any trouble at all. And delight to fly. And unlike Dave now, where they don't go so far except into the war zones now, we used to go around the world on a 17-day trip. And then, you know, come home, mow the lawns, get a clean zoo bag and go and do it all again. So from there to C-130s, and that's where I'll leave that. Short time after, about 2.5 years on 40 Squadron, I got my badge on the boss's desk and said, that's it, thank you, I'm off into civilian employment. And that's where it took me from 1979. At some opportune time, while I happened to be in a simulator on a 767 exercise, the late Bob Tarr said to me, you used to fly Gooney birds in the Air Force, didn't you? And I said, yes, I did. And he said, well, we could use you, why don't you come back and do it? So a short time later I came out here. Jesse was wondering what the hell this DC-3 or Dakota was all about back then, they were called. And I climbed into this aeroplane with Bob Tarr, and we did about 45 minutes of the circuit here, and he said, let's not waste any more of your money. So from that day on, here I am, and that was 1999 I think it was, so I've been back on the aeroplane ever since. And I have to say, it's been through a lot of transitional different flying in the time that I've been there, and it's been all that time, of course, manned and flown by volunteers both in the air and on the ground. And it's been a huge, huge responsibility and task to keep it airworthy, there's no question about that. And this year alone it will go back to field air at Parson and once again have the wings ripped off it. And all for naught really, because the aeroplane, as you probably well know, this one in particular, has never been a top dresser and has never had a shot fired and anger at it because it came out of the factory in late 44, so it never saw any wartime service. And predominantly it's been kept in pretty good condition, and we like to think that we could continue flying it, but who knows where the future takes us. The interesting thing, and I think Yong Si back there, my right-hand man this morning, will validate that, you know, it's not a hard aeroplane to fly, but it's a very easy aeroplane to lose control of. And, you know, the old motto that there's only two sorts of DC-3 pilots, and there's only two sorts of Harvard pilots. There's those who've ground loop and those who are going to. So, and Yongtze's a classic example of a guy with minimal hours that did a few hours in the Satabria across the other side of the airfield and came and jumped in this big bird and ran away with it. And it's not hard, as I say, not a hard aeroplane to fly, but it's one of those beasts that if you don't get on top of it quickly, it's going to beat you. Note your takeoffs and landings ever the same, and I think Yongtze will agree as well that it's got its own idiosyncrasies. You know, it's one of these left foot, right foot aeroplanes, so when you get lined up at the end of the runway, it needs a lot of right rudder initially to keep it pointing in the right direction. And then, of course, because the gyroscopic effect of the tail coming up and the down-going blade on the critical engine, you're going to get a big gyroscope. So suddenly you go, oh, left foot. And it has to be, I have to say, relatively big course movements. And then, you know, it's better to, with this aeroplane, to put too much in and let it off and not put enough in, because if it gets away, there's no stopping it. Very heavy on the controls, but at the same time, quite responsive. It's not easy to fly the sort of air show demonstration that we do, this little short handling display. It's very, very heavy on the ailerons. And to get it to point and go where you want it to, really you've got to start, while you're turning one way, you've got to start going the other way so that it gets round in time. It's original fly-by-wire, as you well know. No hydraulics in the aeroplane except for the critical services, undercarriage gear and brakes, flaps and brakes. And our particular aeroplane out here has no fancy gear in it other than we do have a GPS, of course. And Gus we trust, as we all do, don't we? How many of you still navigate on an airways chart? Excuse me. How many of you use a GPS? Come on, be honest. You liars. I don't believe you. I don't believe you for a minute. So we do have GPS in our aeroplane, and we do have a ground proximity system as well. So we've done the best we can in the time available to keep it fitted out so that passenger safety for us and crew safety, of course, is paramount. We don't take any risks with the aeroplane because it's too precious. And by and large, we're reasonably, not so much strict, but we're selective is probably the right word about who flies it, just purely on the grounds that if you don't have any tail dragger time and you want to become a member of the syndicate, you will certainly have to go away and get some before we'll leave and let you sit in the seat. And then it's entirely dependent on just how well you show up on the smaller aeroplanes as to whether you get to do the big ones. We're currently in the process of starting another 12-day tour around New Zealand next Thursday week, and that'll take us down through Tauranga to Napier for the night, and then the following day down to Omaka for the air show for 3 days, and then we'll lob on south down the South Island through Ashburton, Queenstown, Wanaka, Hokitika, Westport maybe, Nelson, New Plymouth and home. So 12 days away. Most of the sector's relatively short, maximum about an hour 20, an hour and a half at best, and some of the shorter ones just 20 minutes, less, straight over the Crown Range to Wanaka from Queenstown. So we're looking forward to that, and there's the opportunity for that to continue into the following year, and this is all dependent, of course, on keeping the aeroplane flying. So that's the critical thing. We could use undoubtedly a lot more public support, and it goes without saying that our aeroplane's lived outside. It'll have its 30th birthday in October this year. Lived outside all that time, and our biggest issue, as you can well understand, is corrosion, especially in the salt-laden sea air in the local area here. And you can imagine that Air Chat's AWP across there at Auckland, whilst they've got a hangar, it's used 99% of the time for servicing. So their aeroplane lives outside as well, and they're a lot closer to the tide than we are. So corrosion's a big issue, and one of the things that we've always wished for and longed for, of course, is a hangar to put the aeroplane into. Unfortunately, we don't have that luxury. We're talking at least $1 million, I would imagine, and maybe a bit more to put it into a hangar that is capable of taking the aeroplane plus a few bits and pieces that we have sitting around the airfield here. If we could get the public of Auckland to put their hand in their pocket just for a measly $1, it would happen. But unfortunately, you know, the long black and flat white at Kaimara on, you know, Sunday morning is more important. So we make no apologies for the fact that we've always got our hand out, and if it weren't for pub charities and White House Tavern here at Papakura, we would have been long gone many years ago. So really, with you know, unless anybody's got any particular questions, queries, doubts, we can go and have a look at the aeroplane if you would like to do that.